Hello class, and welcome to the video for assignment 6.1 in web design. So you can see I have it opened up here to the Plus Portal page, and we are going to get started with working on that and completing the assignment. So first thing I need to do is I have to download the instructions. So I'm going to click over here on download, save the file, and then of course I need to extract this information. So I select my downloads, pick which folder I want it to appear in, and we'll just leave it on the downloads folder and select extract. Then I'll go to downloads and check out my folder. A6.1 is what is inside that zip file. So A6.1, I'm going to double click on it, and let's open up our instructions. A little too gigantic, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Alright, in this assignment, you will be adding additional structure to your HTML documents using the box model properties to enhance the look of the layout. So all the things we learned from chapter number 8 in your textbook. The look of layout, styling links, and text a bit further. First, make a copy of A6.1 files and then rename them as A6.1, your last name. So I'm going to go to my folder where I have the file. Let's see here. So I'm actually going to rename this one right here quickly. You don't have to do this part. I'm going to take my completed file and put it in this folder. There we go. So we won't get confused. So I'm going to take my old folder right here, A6.1. and my last name. I'm going to make a copy of it and rename it. So just like we do every single time. Now here I have a couple extra files I'm going to get rid of. So right now your structure should look like this. You can see CSS folder has site.css in it, images, CSS syntax, and me. That's my picture, and of course these HTML files. So we just completed this part of renaming it. Next thing you need to do for requirements is adding div elements. First off, modify each of your HTML documents, index.html, html.html, and css.html to have the following structure. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can kind of see the whole picture. So basically I'm dividing it up, so overall the body section is one big container. So you can see div ID container right here. Then any of my headers or images, H1, H2, so basically foundations of web design in your name or learning CSS, any of that is up here in the header. And then you can see I have ULID navigation and I add home except for index.html. And we're adding a new link to it of JavaScript. And you notice we don't have a page yet, so we're just putting a number sign. And also, we have div ID main for our main content that we have in the body. So any content that comes directly after the closing UL element. Right here. So we're going to go through right now in the HTML files and do just that. Some of you may notice here in my voice, I may be blowing my nose a little bit throughout the video. I'm a little under the weather here, so got sick over the Thanksgiving break, so please bear with me as we're going through this. So I first off need to get into the folder I have where I have my files. So they're stored on my flash drive, but wherever you have them stored, make sure it's a memorable place to make it as easy as possible for you. So right here I have A6.1. I'm going to actually select all three files here and click open. It's going to open up all of them for me. And let's open up site.css while we're at it as well. So you can see I have my 4 files open. I'm going to zoom in here, make it easier for you to see what it is we're looking at. And let's do text wrap as well. So make sure you open up those files while I'm getting these set up so you can watch. and we can get this done together. So really, this assignment is all about adding the CSS to it. Because, of course, we could easily program basic words in a web page, but we want web pages to look nice and modern. And that's often the sign of a beginning programmer, is that they have a lack of CSS coding, and the page doesn't look as nice. Now it looks like it's saying we have an error because apparently I had a typo of a hyphen there. Alright, so we need to do that structure. So first off, it said in our instructions we need a div container, div header, and then of course a div main and the UL. So I'm going to go to, let's see here, the HTML file I'm on first is CSS.html. And so I got to make sure it's there. Now the div IDs we're adding are in the body section. So you want to get down to where you can see body right after the head. And the first one is div ID header. And you can see right now that my div ID for the header is a little bit off because this content right here is not over there. So I'm going to copy this, H1, Foundations Web Design, H2, Learning CSS, or excuse me, I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to paste right here, and I'll get the indent set up correctly. I'll zoom in a little bit further for you. Right here, now it's in my header where it needs to be. But before the header, and I can see my closing tag here, I also need to add div ID = container, because we're going to be editing the CSS and changing it. And I could take my closing tag, I'm going to cut it, so actually I'll put it back there so you can see it. I'm going to cut it and then move it all the way down here to where just before my body closing tag is. And you can see it stretches from div ID container to down here. Div header is right here. I'm going to indent it so we can see it's contained in here. And then after the header, right away after it, I'm going to have my navigation section. So even right here, this main part isn't in the right spot. So you may have some of this coding here, but it needs to be swapped around a little bit. The main part has to go under the closing UL tag. So I'm actually going to put it right there. And then this part, the nav, should be right after the div tag. So let's backspace this, get rid of all these extra lines. I'm going to indent this as well, just to make it a little bit more organized. And right here, just like that. So div ID header, right here, closing tag, div ID main, and the main one is right here, the closing tag for it. So I'm actually going to indent it so it's in line with that. And then my container one is right here, and let's indent this one so it's in line with that. So you can see I now have div ID container, which covers the whole body section, and then I have my header, which is right here, navigation, which is right here, which is a UL tag, and then a div ID for my main section right here, and that's right after the UL. And that's the CSS page. Now before we're done with the CSS page, we have to make sure we include our new hyperlink as well for JavaScript. So all I'm typing in is a href equals quotation mark number sign and closing arrow, just like that. Move your closing anchor tag over here after JavaScript to properly label it. And that is how your CSS page should look. So we're making a lot of changes right there, and you need to go through and change HTML.html and index.html also. So I'm going to do that right now. I saved it. It's good to go. HTML.html, let's do that. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. And I'm going to make sure I have, first off, I got to go down to the body section. We can see here I don't have a header div ID, so I need to push enter. Div ID = header. Put a closing tag after the quotation mark. And then the only thing that goes in it are, of course, my heading font here. So I put the div ID down here, which I just cut. And I'm going to indent these. Keep it organized. It makes it a lot easier for you to read the page as well as also for me. So you want to do these things here. And then also, before div ID header, we need to add in div ID =container. And then I'm going to take this closing div and move it all the way down. All the way down. I'm not kidding. To right here for the body tag. So I'll show that one more time. So that way you can see my closing div tag for containers here, and now I have the div header, which is good. I have after the header, like usual, ULID nav. This is all lined up perfectly. It's indented as well, which is nice. And then this, of course, this is a header, but it comes after the UL closing tag. So this one is going to go into div ID equals main closing tag. And I'm going to actually scoot this over one. I'm going to take the closing tag, div tag, cut it, and move it down to just before this div tag as well. So now I have two div tags down here, and this one is for my div ID main. So I'm going to hold it here for just a second so you can see it. So div ID main just above the adding a movie header, and then right under UL closing tag, and then I'm going to scroll down, and then right here div ID closing div. So that's how it should look. So we save that, and before we do that, moving on to index, we have to add in our hyperlink here in JavaScript. So put a href =, and then number, closing, arrow, and let's move the anchor part over to after JavaScript. And that's html.html. So make sure you're going through those files, and now we're going to move on to index.html, which is just a little bit different from the other ones. Alright, so you should be on index.html, which we are right now, and then we got to make sure we have all of our div ID. So div ID header, you can see I went down to my body tag right here. Div ID header already located in there, so we're good to go on that, which is great. I'm going to indent this over, make it a little bit easier. Or actually, excuse me, I'm going to leave this here and then indent these over to make it easier. Now with the ULID nav, remember we want to add in here a link for JavaScript and put the number sign because we don't have an actual HTML page for it yet, and then cut the anchor tag and put it after JavaScript. So I made that change here, and then of course it says we need div ID main after our UL closing tag right here, which we do. So it's already set up for us in that way, which is great. Closing div tag here, but we do need to add at the very top here, right after the body opening body tag, put div ID =, container, and put the closing div tag, cut it, and put it all the way down here right before the closing body tag. And so you can see I have the appropriate div tags down here, the closing ones, my div ID main, ULID nav, and my link, and then my div ID header, div ID container. So that's a lot just for the beginning of our assignment. So hopefully you got that done. If you need to pause the video, look back at it, do that. It says here your index.html document already has the div element with the ID attributes with the value header and main, as you saw. Use it as a reference. You can really look at, we already just did it. So make sure you have no other div elements than the ones noted above, which you shouldn't. So you could see in my files I didn't have anything extra. Make sure you don't have anything extra in yours so it doesn't confuse it. Now stop. Make sure you move the new images for this assignment located in the zip file you download to your A6.1 files folder, specifically the images folder. So I'm going to open up my folder for the instructions, go to images, or actually, excuse me, not images. Right here are my two that I need to copy. So I'm just going to copy them, and I'm going to put them inside of my assignment folder. So you see A6.1 right here. Go to images and paste them. So you can see BG body and then big quote. So make sure you include those because we're going to need them for our assignment. All right, let's take a look at our instructions. Again, if you need to go back, pause it, do so. At the top of the very top of your site.css document and above the rule for the body, done in assignment 5, add the following rule. Use the universal selector asterisk to set the padding and margin on all sides to value of 0. Set box sizing to border box, and copy and paste the following to the add above the declaration you just added. So let's add this part in first to our assignment. So I'm going to go to site.css. Let's zoom in so you can see it. And it says we're dealing with, the part we are dealing with here in our assignment is to add above the rule for the body. So I see body right here. I'm going to click, press enter, so I can add this in. I'm going to just space it out a little bit extra. I put selector, and then I'm going to type in padding, or space, padding, oh no, hang on, I'm forgetting stuff, curly bracket, enter, and then padding, margin, so you can see I have the comma separating these two, 0, like that. Or excuse me, no, I actually need to do this. Padding, colon, 0, semicolon, and then margin to get that in there. And then after that, I need to type in box sizing, border box, semicolon. Make sure you save your file throughout as we're working on it. And that they said to add in there. And then also they said to copy this text right here. So I'm actually going to select it one at a time. It says to add it above the declaration you just added. That's what we typed in. So right above this, I'm actually just going to go and add it in up here. So I'll press space and paste this. And then I'm going to go back, copy this part here, and paste it there. If you remember from reading in the textbook, the reason we add this to it is it just makes it easier for our browser, different browsers to be similar across the board. So because Firefox, Microsoft Edge, all of them read things in different ways. So save that and let's move on to our next step. So dealing with box sizing. Adding background images. In this next step, make sure you have BG body ping image, which we did move, to our images folder. In the previous assignment for the body selector, you have already established the following properties: background color and font family. Let's add more. So body selector right here, background color, font family. So I'm going to click over here, press space. If you have it set up for word wrap, it'll work just fine. And I have to type in font size, background image, background repeat, background position, all those things. So we're going to do that right now. So I have my insertion point over here, and I'm going to type it in. So font size, type in 1M, make sure I have that right. Yeah, 1M, semicolon, background image, and then you type in URL. This is a little bit different. Period, images / bg underscore body dot ping. After that, semicolon, and then type in background repeat x semicolon, and background position left top, and then that's it, semicolon. So we just added in all that new code. Remember, make sure you're checking throughout up here where it tells you if your syntax is wrong, because it's a good way to check and see, did you have a typo? Did you mess it up? You can check it as you go. It's going to save you a lot of time. So we just added in all of these different things here to for the background image. And if done correctly, you should now see a graphic black and white line with a drop shadow at the top of your web page that runs the length of your web browser. I'm going to show it at the end. You can check throughout if you want to make sure it's working properly, but for the sake of video, we're just going to keep going. Adding space to paragraphs. For the P selector, paragraph, set the margin bottom to 0.625 em. This adds spacing after each closing paragraph tag. And I'm going to add this in my coding here. You can see we don't have a paragraph selector just for that. So what I'm going to do is right above this one, I'm going to add it in. So you can see paragraph and list. I'm just going to put paragraph for selector, and it said we need to add in margin bottom 0.625 em semicolon. So you need to add in this here because it's going to add that extra space at the bottom. Basically, like I said, for the closing paragraph tag. Alright, and then moving along, don't be afraid to pause. If I'm moving too quickly here, I know I'm moving at a fast pace. Add new declaration blocks to the navigation. In the previous assignment, you've already established the background color for the UL selector with ID attribute of nav. Now we're going to set the padding to 5 pixels on top and bottom, 10 pixels on left and right, and then set margin bottom only for all side, or for the margin bottom at 10 points. So I'm going to go here back to my coding, and then I need to go down to the nav selector because they said earlier, yes, we did already have this in here. I'm going to push the space bar and then add in padding. And remember, it goes top, right, bottom, left. It's like a clock. So 5 pixels for top, 10 pixels for right, 5 pixels for bottom, 10 pixels for left. And margin bottom, because it applies just the one thing, 10 pixels like that. So I added in this coding right here. So type that in with your selector nav to change it as well. So we add that extra padding to our new declaration blocks. Alright, now it says move to the bottom end of your CSS site.css document. We're going to be adding a lot here to the bottom of the file. So I'm going to go down here, click, press enter, so I'm under here, and then let's keep looking at our instructions. In your HTML, so all our HTML files here, I hope you added in the div and ID attribute that has a value of container, which we did earlier, because in CSS you need to create a new rule for the div with the selector, so number sign ID selector, that has a value container. Set its width to 960 pixels, or better yet 60 em, which is what we're going to do, and why it's more user responsive to user settings. So we're going to go with 60 em. And then margin 0 on top and bottom, and auto left and right. So we'll do 0, auto, because remember, it's like a clockwise top, right, bottom, left. The contents of your website, mainly the paragraph, should no longer extend to the very borders of your browser when you increase the width to the sides of your screen. So I'm going to go into my site.css file. Make sure you're saving throughout. I'm going to zoom in. Oh, I have it zoomed in as far as it'll go. And then I'm going to add in selector, so number sign, container. Really not. Trying to see if I can make the text any bigger here. Nope. Okay, so container, space, curly bracket, width. Like they said, 60 em is the preferred one. And then, oh, you know what? I didn't press enter after this. 60 width, em, and then let's keep typing here. Margin 0 for top, auto for right, 0 for bottom, auto for left, and semicolon. Push enter again. There, just to keep it organized. And that's dealing with the container. So make sure you type in that coding. Make sure you check up here for the syntax to be right. Save it, and let's move on. So container width we just set. Spacing up top. Now let's create another rule. This time we'll select the div with the ID selector number sign with the value of header. So we're dealing with the header part, our headings. Set the margin top to 20 pixels, margin bottom to 20 pixels as well. This gives us a little spacing above and below the contents for that div. So I go back to my coding. I'm adding a new rule. So I gotta click here, enter, enter, backspace, and let's type in selector, header, because that's what we were working with. I put curly brackets, push enter, and let's type in our coding. We need a margin top set to 20 pixels. Remember, don't have spacing in between these here. And then margin bottom 20 pixels, semicolon, and there we go. Here's our code right here. I save it. Syntax is still good. Be checking it throughout. It's going to save you a lot of time, heartache at the end. Then let's go to our instructions. Let's have your CSS add some styling to your photograph. So we're going to make our photograph look better. Styling your picture. Make a new rule for div with the ID selector with the value of header with the descendant selector image. Remember the difference between child and descendant to it. Now we're going to change the border to 1 pixel in solid, make it black, but use the hex value, and of course you need to figure out what that value is for black. And then of course set the background color to white, yes, the hex value, and then of course padding to 5 pixels. Well, if you want to find out hex value, easy way to do it, go to Google, look up hex value black, and it'll tell you for this one it's just zeros. Very simple. So you can look it up. I'm going to just type them in for you. So we are going down to the bottom here. Click. We're adding a new rule. So what I have to put in for this one is it said I'm dealing with the header, but I'm dealing with the image descendant inside the header. The way I can show the descendant is by just adding a space and then typing in what the descendant is, which is image. So header, image, put in my curly brackets, push enter, and let's type in what we need. It said to add border 1 pixel in solid, and then it said to add in as well border color, and for black it's supposed to be number sign 000 semicolon, and then it said add in background color, which is supposed to be white, I believe. Yes, white, which the hex number for that is FFF. Lots of F's. And then we have padding, colon, and it said to add 5 pixels, semicolon, and there's all your coding we need to add right here. So border 1 pixel solid, border color, black, background color, white, padding, 5 pixels. And it's going to make your image look a lot nicer. But we're going to look at that at the end. Alright, this next section is the biggie. It affects at this point the text on the index.html page where block quote is, and take a look at the screenshots below if you need to check how you're doing. So let's first add in all this block quote coding here, and then we'll be able to take care of styling and then look at our screenshots. So styling the block quote, we're going to deal with font size to 2.5 width, margin, padding, color, font family, font style, background image, background repeat, and background position. So I'm going to go here. This is all brand new rule. So press enter and let's add it in. Now because it's just a block quote, we don't have to put it in a selector. So we type in block quote, curly bracket, enter, and let's type it in. First off, it said font size. It needs to be 2.5 Width, it said, needs to be set to 16.5 Margin, it said, top and bottom was 0, right and left were auto. So 0, auto, 0, auto. Padding needs to be 10 pixel. It says 10 pixel for right, 10 pixel for bottom, and then 45 pixel for the left side. Then color, it said needs to be 777 for hex. Font family needs to be Georgia serif. So we're flying through this fast, so if you need to pause it, don't be afraid to pause it. Font style, oblique, background image is URL, period, images, big quote, dot, ping, parentheses, semicolon. And then it says for background repeat, I know it's a lot typing in here, no repeat. Background position, because if you tell it, don't tell it to not repeat, it will repeat over and over and over. Background position, not point. Left for top, 8% for our right. Left for bottom, and 8% for our left. So I put it in there. Right now it says their syntax is off. Unexpected end of value. It should be no repeat. So we do have it in here. Oh, hang on a second. Let's make sure this is looking correctly. So background repeat, no repeat. Alright, so this, oh, it's because I put a colon instead of a semicolon. So make sure you're looking. Use that syntax. No, that should be it. Oh, here we go. I switched them. Background repeat needs to be colon, space, no repeat, semicolon. Alright, let's make sure it's right. Alright, so that should be correct. So it's for some reason displaying that. We'll take care of that later if that still is an issue, but that should be everything else we were supposed to have. So background repeat, no repeat. Phew, that's it for that rule. So you should have that all typed in right here. It's a lot, I know. So have that in there, type it in, and then the quoted text should look quite a bit different now, larger and centered, with a large graphic quote mark to the left of the text. If you want, you can look at the screenshots to see how it's supposed to look. We're going to keep moving on in the video though. However, the citation, 37 signals, needs some help. Let's address that next. Styling the citation. Write a rule to select block quote with a descendant selector footer. So we're using the descendant selector again. We're going to change how it displays the block. We're going to set the font size to 0.4 em. We're going to set the color to number sign 888 and text align to right. So I'm going to do that right now. Let's type it in. So we need block quote, and then our descendant is footer, and then we're going to type in display block, which is what we need. Font size is supposed to be 0.4 em. Color is supposed to be hex, so number sign 888, and text align is right. And there we go, we have it saved here just like that. And that's how it should look. So this is typed in correctly. I don't know why our syntax, or at least with Komodo Edit, is saying it's incorrect, but it should be good to go. Oh, it's saying there's something error here with the spacing. Alright. So, we have that typed in. Changes 37 signals. Wow, do you see how many lines of CSS you have? We could actually have less, and if you know how now, give it a shot, but be warned, you get penalized if things don't work. You can mess around with it if you want to make it smaller. I split it up like this, but it is true you can do it differently there. So let's take a look, compare it. So what I'm going to do is I have my screenshots here, and I'm going to open up my HTML files inside, I chose the wrong folder here, inside of Microsoft Edge. So let's open all these ones up. Alright, so this is really zoomed in, so I'm going to zoom out for these so we can actually see them. Alright, so you can see here, first off, this is our index.html screenshot, And this is how it looks here. We can see the picture has changed and the quote looks like this. So I'm going to go to index, and you can see it looks like, first off, it did work for the quote looking like this, but we need to make a change because it doesn't have that quote picture right here. So let's go back to where the quote is. So bigquote.ping, URL images, and let's take a look at that one to make sure. So space, let's try refreshing that. Alright, so it should be in there. Let me make sure it's in my folder as well. So you want to make sure you can troubleshoot and find, okay, where are my pictures? Are they in there right? Because we type in URL. Let me get rid of the space. So images, big quote. Oh, you know what? I believe I forgot my backslash. Let's try this again. There we go. So go into your file, make sure you add that slash in. So I'm going through it very quickly with you, so if I have a typo, I check the syntax, but sometimes it doesn't always work in telling it. So that's one way to catch it, is the syntax thing, but you need to look as well. So now it looks how it needs to with the screenshot. Make sure you compare it to the screenshot as well so it works. Alright, so that's index. Let's check html.html. And you can see it looks the same. So perfect. That's how it should look. And then moving along to css.html. css.html was probably the one that changed the least, I would say. But you can tell all the changes are there. We have that black line at the top. We have that gradient going down. And then, of course, you can see the picture was changed and the quote as well. So once you check to make sure all those things are right, you are going to submit it. And you will need to upload your files to, of course, webhost or 000webhost.com. So don't forget to go there and do it. I'm not going to show it in the video for sake of time, but remember, here's the link. And then what you need to do when you submit it this time is, of course, compress your file. So you're going to zip it into a folder, put your last name on it. So all I'm going to do, for instance here, is go outside of my folder here. I can right click on it, choose send to compressed zip folder, and that name right there is fine. So now it's all ready to be sent, ready to go. So you will upload that to me, and you're going to use that new thing we talk about in class today. In Plus Portals, there's a way you can submit it now. Instead of emailing to me each time, it's going to make it a lot easier. When you do submit it, make sure you type in the website link in the description section of where you submit the file. So you're not going to email anymore, even though it says that in the instructions. You're going to use what I'll show you today in class. And that is how you complete assignment 6.1 for web design. Make sure you submit these files and have a great day.